Again, my name is Deborah and I'm an addict.
Hi, Deborah.
And we're here today. The topic is steps 1 through 3. We have two phenomenal gentlemen that's going to be our speakers for today. And I'd like to introduce Zach. Zach is from the North Atlanta area. I don't know anything about Zach, but he's here, so I'm sure he's got a message that's going to help not just others, but especially myself.
Thank you. I'm an addict named Zach.
Hey, Zach.
And I had a good little while to prepare for this. So like any good addict, on the way down here, I had some books on tape on step 1, 2, and 3 so I could really prepare myself for this and get ready. And I'm nervous. I don't like speaking in front of people. But, I think that as I was listening to that and remembering working those steps and how it was so good to go back through those things and get, not necessarily that I don't know what they are, but get reinitiated with them and start that wheel moving again, and just listen to our literature and read our literature as it pertains to those steps. And I had with the powerlessness in the first step and things like that, it's how it directly affects my life now is so much different than it affected my life when I first got here. It was pretty evident that I was powerless over drugs when I first got here. And I was really fortunate in the fact that my ass had been whipped, so I was willing to admit that I was powerless. And my sponsor was really good about telling me that if I picked up the we of the program, I was no longer powerless. Once I choose to use drugs again, I lose all that power. But with you guys, I've gotten some of that power back. You guys have helped me restore some of my life back. And I had, you work these steps and you answer the questions and you see how they relate to your life. And last year, about 6 months ago, I got to actually work a first step in something that directly affected my life. And my mom is 48 years old and was on vacation, and I got a phone call about 4 o'clock in the morning that my mother had a stroke in Panama City. And the feeling of powerlessness in that moment was something I can't describe to you. And so we're on our way down there where everybody's telling us that she's going to be okay. And, we get a call from the doctor that says, you guys have to make a decision on whether to take this brain aneurysm out. And things happen that quick. We're eating at the Cracker Barrel, and like the drop of a hat, something happened that quick. And it was because of the we of the program that we got through that. And I just remember, because I'm fortunate enough to be married to another addict, and sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing. What happened is I got inside of myself, and I didn't reach out to anybody, and my wife did. And the amount of phone calls that I got as that related, that said, hey, I don't exactly know what you're going through, but we're going to be okay. And I think about that, and I think about when I walked into the hospital room and knowing that there was nothing I could do. And that feeling of powerlessness was very evident at that point in my life. And the really cool thing is that 6 months ago, my mom couldn't walk. She couldn't drive. She couldn't do all of these things. And she is now walking with a cane. She's driving and things like that. And the whole time, I got to be there with her because I didn't go use. And I got to help her, and I got to take her through therapy, and I got to do all these things as a direct result of not using. Because at the time, I wanted to. I really did. I was raised by my mom. She was a single parent, and, so I didn't know what to do. I thought that was one of my big reservations going into this thing. If something happened to my sons or my mom, I would use. And so I got to walk through one of those reservations. And she's still here with me and things like that. And, so I always want to, when I share, I try to share how something affects me, how I can work a step in my life. And that was one of those ways that I was able to do that. I think a little bit with step 2, before I got here, I had never been introduced to any religion or anything like that, and never had any resentment against it. I just thought it wasn't for me. And I would go to church with friends, and there would be somebody telling me that if I didn't do a certain thing, I was going to a certain place. And when I got here, you told me, we don't give a shit. Do whatever you want to do. Make it whatever you want to make it. And it doesn't have to be in this box. It doesn't have to be wrapped up in this box. I don't have to understand it all the time. I just have to know that it's there and it's keeping me clean. That's all I have to know. So I was, and the cool thing about it is that still, I don't know. Still, sometimes I don't understand it, but I know that there is a presence there that is keeping me clean. Because I still do stupid shit. Sometimes on a daily basis. But I know that but I'm staying clean somehow, some way. And I'm really glad that you guys didn't tell me that I had to believe what my sponsor believed. I didn't have to believe what somebody with 20 years clean believed. I'm really, really glad for that. Because I probably would have got a resentment, and I probably would have left. And I think that I remember doing the second step, and I remember answering the questions and crying, because I felt like I no longer had to do everything by myself anymore. And for a long time, and still sometimes to this day, the group of Narcotics Anonymous is my higher power. Not necessarily the people in it, but when I come into a meeting, I feel God. I know that His presence is there. And it's just growing. Every day it's growing. I know, and I'm fortunate at the fact that I no longer feel like I have to understand it all the time to know that it's there, if that makes any sense. With step 3, I think that I wish that step 3 was like you just made a decision one time and then it's over with. I made the decision, I'm good. And it was talking about or on the way down here that we have to, the areas in our lives that we keep away, like that we still try to have control of, are the areas of our life that we have the most problems out of. And that light bulb went off when I started thinking about that today, and then I started thinking about the areas of my life that I'm still trying to control. In the areas of my life that I'm just like, well, I'll leave scratch marks all over them, I'll claw them all up, and then I'm like, well, God, you can have it at this point. I've totally ruined it. And there's some things that I'm still have a hard time letting go. And I think that will, I don't think there's anybody in this room that it just lets everything go. And because I think we let it go sometimes and then we take it back. At least I do. I'm not going to speak for everybody in here. And then it goes on to talk about how just working the first 3 steps, we'll get to a point in our lives where we look back and we say, man, how far have I came? Or, how much different is my life. I came here with, I guess he was 18 months old, my son was, and I had gotten full custody of him, and I didn't know what to do and was scared to death. And so I was still using at the time because I was like, shit, I don't know how to raise a kid. And the judge apparently thought that I did. And, so that's why I got here. That's why I came in here, was because I wanted to be a father to my son. It's not why I stay here. I stay here because I see what my life is like when I don't use. But, I look back now, and it's like, it's amazing. He's 7 years old now, and, I get to leave this convention today, and I get to go coach him at a tournament in LaGrange, Georgia. I mean, look, how beautiful is it? How beautiful is that? And then at the house, I've got a 2-month-old baby. And I don't know about y'all, but I didn't think that I would ever have a baby with somebody that I was married to. So that was a big deal to me. That was something that's like, I did something as an adult. It made an adult decision, and we came together and decided that we wanted to have a child together. God was definitely involved in that decision. It's an amazing thing to look back. Last Sunday was 6 years for me, and it's amazing to think how far my life has changed in six years. If you think about that, that's not a long time.
That's a long time.
But what I'm saying is, as I used for a long time, and I think about where my life is today, and I've just got some of the gifts of Narcotics Anonymous. This may make some people. I wish that we had more promises than just freedom from active addiction, because I think that there is more that this program has to offer. That's just my personal opinion. But that's just me, because I think if you get in here and you stay clean and you work the program, I think there's a lot that this program has to offer. But I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to shut up and let somebody else have the floor. Thank you for letting me share.
Thanks for sharing. That was awesome. It gives me great pleasure to introduce this next gentleman. Actually, we happen to be in the same. Again, my name is Deborah, and I'm an addict.
Hey, Deborah.
We happen to be in the same home group, so I do know a little bit about him. I love the way that he shares. He's been in recovery. He's got a little time under his belt now, and he tells the truth. He shares honestly. He doesn't hold anything back. He has a knowledge of the steps, the traditions, the concepts. He serves, and he's just an outright upstanding guy. I'm going to give you Dave.
Good morning. I'm Dave. I'm an addict.
Hey, Dave.
First of all, I'd like to thank God, and I'd like to thank you, Deborah, and I'd like to thank the gentleman that shared before me. I always begin by saying that I thought that I would die in active addiction. I didn't think I was going to actually make it. I used for 22 years, and I lived like an animal. I thought I was going to die in active addiction. And I actually did think I was going to stop until I was in a skirt and stilettos. Active addiction, I was like a prize fighter, one day past his prime. Every day, every time I stepped in the ring against my addiction, I got beat half to death. It whooped me unmercifully. We're talking about step 1, step 2, and step 3. And this is a wonderful foundation to begin a new life, a new beginning.
Thank you.
Step 1, I'm powerless over my addiction, and my life has become unmanageable. Powerless, when I came in, I thought I had the power. I thought I had the juice. but all evidence showed me that whatever I had, it was a failure. It was a failure. And it took me a while to see the powerlessness. And I can think of one incident that describes it explicitly. I remember using on the side of the house, and my neighbor had a crawl space. And so I went into my neighbor's crawl space as deep as I could, and I did one. And the dope at this point, it did me so bad I went into a psychotic fit under the house. And of course, I didn't start coming to my senses until I could see the blue lights outside and the flashlight in, and it said, come on out of here. And when I got out, all the neighbors was outside. And I was so embarrassed. But where the powerlessness came in was when I got a little rest, I remember I had threw my tool in the crawl space. And I went right back into that crawl space the next evening, did the same thing, and had the same psychotic fit, and the police had to pull me out again. That's powerlessness. But what's even deeper was that I wanted to live, but every single day in active addiction, I was committing suicide. I had begun to do something that was against my will. I wanted better, but I no longer had control. One of the spiritual principles of step one is honesty. And when I came in this time, I was so demoralized. I was so spiritually injured. Not only was I spiritually injured, I was physically injured. But I'm not going to get into that because we really want to get into the crux of this thing. And I remember asking and searching deep inside myself and saying, why me? Why me? I never woke up and wanted to do this. I never woke up and said, hey, I wanted to be an addict. I never woke up and said, you know what, I want to be a crackhead. You know what, I want to be an alcoholic. And this was a litany that I used to tell my mother when I wanted sympathy. Until one day my mother said, no, I guess you probably didn't, but you had to work a long, hard time to get there. You don't wake up in one day and be an addict. You got to put some work in. And in all honesty, I realized that I had to do something different. I had to look at what was going on honestly. And I had to get some acceptance. I knew I was an addict before I came in. And I found that out one night. I was talking to a gentleman about what he wanted to give me for $10 at 2 o'clock in the morning. And this young gentleman jumped off the porch with some Timberland boots on and his blue jeans way below his waist, and he kicked me in my hindside as hard as he possibly could. And I remember just holding on to my package as the jeans about my knees gave loose and my skin on my legs was skinned. And I remember going home, looking in my bathroom mirror and calling myself a crackhead. And I used. And I lived up to being a crackhead. That was powerlessness for me. Not only that, all of my relationships had become damaged. Every social relationship I had was predicated on, can I use you to do something to hurt myself again and again and again and again. A job was nothing but a means to get one more. A relationship was nothing but another avenue for destruction for my life. When I got honest, accepted the fact that I was an addict, accepted the fact that my life had become unmanageable, and surrendered, things started changing for me. When I realized that I was too old to get into the ring one more time, and I had to throw in the towel. See, I thought surrender meant you was a sucker. I thought surrender mean that you were weak. But I come to find out that there's power in surrender. When I let go and let God, but first of all, let me say this, my understanding of God was warped. My understanding of a higher power was warped. Actually, I could not see powerlessness in my life or unmanageability until I connected with a sponsor guy. When I came in, I was smoldering. See, I was not on fire, but the smoke was still coming off my presence, and I couldn't see because of the haze. And I needed someone to direct me. I needed someone to show me this new way of life. Because if I interpreted myself, I knew one thing, that the best that I could possibly do had me on my back in a gurney. And I could hear the doctor saying that spiritually, I could hear the doctor saying we're going to lose this one. I never, 22 years straight. My God. But what happened is I started to work this step with a sponsor. I started to look at my life honestly, and I realized that, I'm in trouble here. That nothing is going right. Once I ingest a substance, it goes haywire. And one important thing that I got in step one was that every time I used, I had to make a sober, conscious decision to destroy my life again and again and again. So what happened is I had to get to a point, I knew I didn't have the power. I had to get to a point, and we're going to step two, that I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Because obviously I was living below a human standard. And obviously I didn't have the power to bring myself through. Now, how did I come to believe that? When all the evidence in my life showed that I was a failure. Everything was going wrong. Well, what happened is I took some suggestions. I started making meetings. And I started listening. And I began hearing people tell my story. It wasn't the circumstances wasn't exact, but the emotions and the feelings was exactly the same. And I began to identify, and I began to connect, and I began to see that people were tapping into something that was working. Nothing ever worked in my life. What was working for those other people was greater than what I had working for myself. So the only thing I had was to tap in and watch the people who was here ahead of me and watch this thing work for them. And what happened is that started to create a hope. I had a hope that I could probably make it. I could probably find my way home, being lost at sea for 22 years. I might be able to get with my mama again, have a relationship with my brother, have a relationship, a kind and loving relationship with myself. Now, my sponsor told me it didn't make a difference what, who, where, your higher power was, but it had to be kind, gentle, loving, and more importantly than anything, it had to be stronger than me. It had to be a power greater than myself. And as evidence that people were coming back the next day clean, and they were brushing their teeth, they were washing their clothes. See, what I was attracted to was I was attracted to the guy that had the starch pants, that had a real sharp message, that was, that was clear, and that was attracted to me. I was very attracted to that. So I kind of gravitated to those people, and I wanted to see what was working in their lives. And what was happening was, to my surprise, these guys was working a proven program of recovery that said that rarely have they seen a person fail if you follow these steps. And I said that, well, I had a hope that if I did exactly what this program said I could make it. And so I began to do that. And I began to see that things wasn't as hard as it was the day before. And they told me to make 90 meetings in 90 days. What that did for me was it helped me come to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me, because, see, I had this thing called addictive behavior. If I did anything past 6 or 7 times, I'm probably going to do it again. So when I made 90 meetings in 90 days, that addictive behavior had switched from this other junk to coming somewhere that could possibly help me and turn my life around. Now, I have to say I'm a product of treatment, and I've been to so many treatments that I really cannot, even to the day, I couldn't remember them all. A matter of fact, it took my 3rd year of celebrating to realize that my clean date happened to be the same day I was released from prison, and it happened to be the exact time that I served. Now, it took me 3 years. So the reason why I'm saying that, because there's areas in my life that I'm still smoldering, like gratitude. See, there's areas in my life that I'm still having problems with, and I still need to come to believe that a power greater than myself can restore me to same. Now, what happened is when I realized that that could happen, I had to make a decision. Now, you know, have you ever been driving in your car and you passed your turn? You know, you don't run in the ditch, you know, to turn around, or you don't run in somebody's yard to turn around. You run up to the stoplight and you turn around, right? Man made a car with a wheel so that when you make the wrong turn or you go farther than your destination, you can turn around. God made man with a wheel, so when you find yourself on the wrong plane, you can use that wheel and you can turn it around. The program taught me that I didn't have to be a slave anymore to a bad decision. That when I find myself in the process of error, when I find myself in a process that's something that is about to destroy me, I can stop. I can tap into the powerlessness, being in the crawl space of my neighbors. I can tap into that memory and realize that when I take control, I'm in the ditch. See, when I want to take the wheel, I'm going to tear something up. I had to remember that, you know what? There's something greater than me. I need to contact that right now. And I need to make a decision that what this higher power is telling me, I can turn my wheel and my life over to this caring, loving entity that God be one day. I used for 22 years. And I was introduced to some people, and one day I stopped using.
How about that?
It was incredible.
Yes, it was.
It was incredible.
Yes, it was.
It was an epiphany. But guess what? God knew that I couldn't even understand that recollection. I couldn't even understand. He knew that I would have to have a sponsor. See, I would have to have someone that I would lean on and tap into that was able to say, see, the reason why I was smoldering is because there was a lot of people that came in before me that was smoldering, and they saw me. They could see me, and they saw the smoke coming, and they knew I couldn't see. And these people stepped into my life. They did interventions of kindness, reminded me I was powerless, helped me to see who I was, showed me where a power was that was greater than me, and helped me to believe that if I tapped into that and gave it to that will, I could make it. Now, how does that affect my life today? I was fortunate enough in this program for my father to say he wanted to live with me. And a few years after that, we found out, I went with my father, and we found out he had cancer. And my daddy came home, and my daddy told me he chose death. it angered me. You're not going to fight? You're not going to step up? And you see what I'm saying? But what happened by this time, I had put so much time into making meetings. I had put so much time in coming and listening and knowing that it was something greater than me. So when I got to the meetings, I had to quiet my thoughts, see, and I had to listen to the collective of the group, which is a greater power than me. And people in these rooms taught me how to get through the death of a loved one without having this self-searching, selfish will that is all about me. These 3 steps taught me that when my father was facing death and he made a choice, that number 1, that I was powerless. When the doctor came in and told my dad that he had 2 weeks to 2 months to live, you're in stage 4 cancer, you have congestive heart failure, and there's nothing else that we can do, my father never batted an eye. I searched him, and I looked for fear because I was afraid. And my daddy told me he chose death. I wanted to curse him. I wanted to tell him, you ain't got to do that. But the program taught me, the steps taught me, in 1, that I was powerless, and 2, that even though I didn't like that decision, there was a power greater than me that could make me see why my dad did what he did. And number 2, that I could turn that all over to the care of God that loved me. Now, my father did, he made it right at 2 months. But guess what the decision, and you know what was amazing about this? Is throughout that whole process, I never even thought about using it. Here's a guy that used for 22 years straight. Here's a guy that stole every dime his mother had on earth. Not 1 time, but 3 times. But was introduced to a proven program of recovery. And I'm the same guy through this program that paid my mama's house off. Now the program don't promise you that. The program promised me freedom from active addiction. But check this out. Without the freedom of acting with addiction, there's nothing that I could do. I'm so grateful, not only to this program, my sponsors here, I'm grateful to my sponsor, people in my network are here. I didn't know how to live. I could read words. I thought I knew what these words, I thought I knew what powerlessness was. I thought I knew what honesty was. See, when I came in, I realized my honesty today was very different than it was then. I remember I used to come to the rooms and I wore every piece of jewelry I had in my jewelry box for 2 years straight. One of the principles in step 1 is surrender. I had to surrender that. I had to let go. I think they let me know that it's time. I didn't prepare for this. When I found out that I had to share, I called my sponsor and a plethora of people and told them I had a problem. I was absolutely in fear. And one of the guys that I called told me, he said, David, that's a real low quality problem. You know what I mean? But what I said that to say is that at any given time, I take things to the extreme. I'll take things to the extreme. I don't know if anything I said helped anyone here today. I pray it touched you. I pray it touched me. All I know is that if anything works this good for this long, I'm in for the long haul. Narcotics Anonymous is like heaven for the addict, for me. Thank you for inviting me into your heaven.
Wow.
Thank you.